The day hasn't started yet, but your mind is already exhausted. You wake up, reach for your phone, and within minutes, your attention belongs to the world. Notifications, messages, news, other people's demands entering your head before your own thoughts even have a chance to form. And most men never realize how much damage this creates. Not because one morning ruins them, but because thousands of unconscious mornings slowly weaken their ability to lead themselves. You tell yourself you need more discipline, but discipline is rarely lost in big moments. It disappears quietly, in the first decisions of the day, in the first thought you tolerate, the first distraction you allow. The first impulse you obey without questioning. The Stoics understood something that modern life constantly tries to erase. A man who cannot direct his mornings will eventually struggle to direct his life, because the morning is when the mind is softest, most impressionable, most vulnerable to habit. And if the first hour of your day is filled with noise, avoidance, and unconscious behavior, the rest of the day often becomes recovery instead of progress. That is why this video is not about becoming obsessed with productivity. It is about reclaiming command over your attention, your emotions, your choices, your inner state before the world begins pulling at it. These 10 Stoic morning habits are simple, but practiced consistently, they begin changing something deeper than routine. They change the relationship you have with yourself. You stop waking up like a man being chased by life, and start waking up like someone prepared to face it consciously. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, leave a like, not for me, but as a quiet decision to stop living every morning on autopilot. Because tomorrow morning will arrive no matter what. The real question is, who will be in control when it does? And the first habit begins before you even stand up. The first battle of the morning is usually invisible. No one applauds it, no one sees it. But it decides more about your mental state than most people understand. It happens in the few seconds after you wake up. That moment when your hand reaches for the phone almost automatically. Not because you truly need something, but because silence feels uncomfortable. Modern life trains people to begin the day consuming before thinking, receiving before deciding, reacting before grounding themselves. And after enough repetition, the mind forgets how to wake up calmly. This is why the first Stoic habit is simple. Do not let the world enter your mind before you enter your own mind first. Not for the first 10 minutes, maybe 20 if possible. No notifications, no scrolling, no news. Because the first thing you consume in the morning often becomes the emotional climate of the day. One anxious message can infect your attention for hours. One piece of outrage can shape your mood before breakfast. The Stoics believed external events should not immediately govern your inner state. But today, many people surrender their state within seconds of opening their eyes. Here is a practical exercise for tomorrow morning. Before touching your phone, sit up and ask yourself one question. What kind of mind do I want to carry into today? Not what tasks you have, not what problems are waiting. What kind of mind? Calm, focused, patient, disciplined. That question creates distance between impulse and action, and that distance is where self-command begins. You do not need a perfect morning routine. You need a protected entrance into the day. Because if the world reaches your mind before you do, your attention will spend the rest of the day trying to return home. But avoiding distraction is only the beginning. The harder skill is learning to stay still long enough to hear what is happening inside you. Most people wake up and immediately try to escape themselves. Not always dramatically, sometimes through noise, sometimes through rushing, sometimes through constant stimulation. Coffee, scrolling, podcasts, messages, endless movement. Anything to avoid sitting alone with the weight they carry internally. But here is the paradox. A man who cannot sit quietly with his own mind in the morning will usually spend the rest of the day running from it in different forms. This is why the second Stoic habit is uncomfortable at first. Sit still for a few minutes before the world speeds you up. No entertainment, no distraction, just awareness. Because many people are not exhausted from work alone. They are exhausted from never allowing their mind to settle long enough to understand what is actually happening inside them. The Stoics practiced observation before reaction, not suppression, not denial. Observation. Tomorrow morning, try this for 3 minutes. Sit somewhere quiet and ask yourself, what is present in me right now? Not what should be there, not what sounds impressive, what is actually there. Stress, resentment, fear, mental fog, pressure. Then ask the second question, and does this feeling need to control my behavior today? That pause matters more than people think, because emotions become dangerous mostly when they operate unconsciously. A man who can recognize his inner state without immediately obeying it becomes harder to destabilize. This does not mean you suddenly feel peaceful every morning. Some mornings will still feel heavy. But discipline is not the ability to feel perfect. It is the ability to remain intentional even when you do not. And strangely enough, when you stop trying to escape every uncomfortable feeling, many of them begin losing their power over you. Once you stop reacting automatically to your inner world, you can finally decide where your energy actually deserves to go. Most people do not lose their energy because they have too much to do. They lose it because their attention is scattered across too many battles. The modern mind wakes up already divided. One part worries about money, another replays old conversations, another wants comfort, another wants progress. And by the time the day truly begins, the mind feels crowded before any real work has even been done. This is why the third Stoic habit is essential. Choose one important battle before the day chooses 10 for you. Not 20 goals, not a perfect schedule, one meaningful difficulty. Because discipline grows faster through concentration than through overload. There is a dangerous illusion many people live with. They confuse constant movement with direction. But being busy is not the same as advancing. The Stoics valued clarity more than frenzy. A calm, focused effort repeated daily will usually defeat chaotic ambition. So tomorrow morning, before checking everything you have to do, write one sentence. If I complete one difficult thing today, it will be this. That is your primary battle. Maybe it is the workout you keep postponing, the conversation you keep avoiding, the project you keep escaping through distractions. Choose it early. Because if you do not consciously decide where your energy goes, the world will gladly spend it for you. And here is something uncomfortable to admit. Many people stay mentally exhausted because confusion protects them from commitment. When everything feels equally important, nothing truly has to be faced. But the moment you choose one real priority, excuses become visible. That is why clarity can feel frightening. It removes hiding places. Still, there is power in narrowing your focus. A man who knows his main task walks differently through the day. His mind wastes less energy negotiating with itself. And often, success is not built through dramatic breakthroughs. It is built through mornings where someone quietly decides, "This matters most today, and I will not run from it." But even after choosing the right battle, another problem appears. The mind still wants comfort more than growth, and that is where the next habit becomes important. There is a reason comfort becomes addictive so quickly. The body loves convenience, the mind loves familiarity, and if you never challenge that instinct in small ways, eventually, even minor discomfort begins to feel unbearable. A delayed message irritates you, a difficult task drains you, a little uncertainty ruins your focus. Not because life became impossible, but because your tolerance for discomfort became too weak. The Stoics understood this deeply. They practiced small forms of voluntary discomfort, not to punish themselves, but to train freedom from impulse. Because a man controlled by comfort is easily controlled by circumstance. Now, this does not mean turning your life into a performance of suffering. You do not need extreme routines. You do not need to become theatrical. The point is much simpler. Teach yourself that discomfort is not an emergency. Tomorrow morning, choose one small thing that is slightly uncomfortable and do it without negotiation. Maybe it is taking a cold shower for 30 seconds. Maybe it is going for a walk without headphones. Maybe it is getting out of bed immediately instead of bargaining for 10 more minutes. Small acts matter because they reshape identity. Every time you act against unnecessary comfort, you send your mind a message: I can experience resistance without obeying it. That lesson changes more than people realize. Because most destructive habits are not caused by lack of intelligence, they are caused by automatic avoidance. Avoiding effort, avoiding boredom, avoiding emotional friction. And the danger is not the discomfort itself. The danger is becoming the kind of person who always retreats from it. One of the most powerful forms of discipline is quietly doing what needs to be done before your emotions agree with it. No drama, no announcement, just action. At first, these small discomforts seem insignificant. But over time, they build something rare, a nervous system that does not panic every time life becomes inconvenient. But discipline is not only built through what you resist, it is also shaped by what you repeatedly place inside your mind each morning. A strange thing happens when most people read philosophy. They admire it, underline it, save quotes from it, post parts of it online, but very little changes in the way they actually live, because knowledge alone rarely transforms behavior. The Stoics were not interested in sounding wise. They were interested in becoming harder to disturb, harder to control, harder to break internally. That is why the fifth habit is not simply reading something meaningful in the morning. It is translating wisdom into behavior before the day begins. One line is enough. Not 10 pages, not endless studying. One idea that forces you to live differently for the next few hours. Maybe you read a reminder that you cannot control other people's opinions. Good. Then, your task today is not to admire that sentence. Your task is to stop checking your worth through other people's reactions. Maybe you read that anger often comes from unrealistic expectations. Then, practice patience the next time someone moves slower than you want. Real philosophy becomes valuable only when it enters behavior. Otherwise, it becomes intellectual decoration. Tomorrow morning, try this simple process. Read one short Stoic idea. Reduce it into one practical instruction. Apply it once before the day ends. Read, reduce, apply. For example, external events do not control my character. Reduced into behavior. Today, I will not let one frustrating moment change the way I speak to people. Simple, but powerful, because repetition shapes identity more than inspiration does. And over time, these small morning reflections begin changing the way you move through ordinary situations. Traffic feels different. Conflict feels different. Delays feel different, not because life became easier, but because your mind stopped treating every inconvenience like a personal attack. And that matters because the next Stoic habit is about preparing for difficulty before difficulty arrives. Most people are emotionally unprepared for ordinary life. Not tragedy, not catastrophe, ordinary inconvenience, a rude message, unexpected traffic, someone ignoring them, a plan changing at the last minute. And because the mind expects the day to go perfectly, even small friction feels personal. This is why the Stoics practiced something powerful every morning. They mentally rehearsed difficulty before it arrived, not to become pessimistic, but to become steadier. Because what shocks you emotionally often controls you emotionally. Tomorrow morning, before the day begins, take 1 minute and quietly imagine 3 situations that could test your patience today. Maybe someone disappoints you. Maybe work becomes chaotic. Maybe your mood suddenly drops. Now ask yourself, how will I respond if this happens? That question changes everything, because preparation creates distance between stimulus and reaction. A man who has already considered difficulty is less likely to collapse into irritation when it appears. This does not remove emotion, it removes surprise. And surprise is often what turns a small inconvenience into emotional chaos. There is another reason this habit matters. Many people secretly believe discipline means feeling calm all the time. It does not. Stoic discipline means expecting friction without becoming consumed by it. The world will interrupt you, people will misunderstand you, plans will fail sometimes. That is part of being alive. The real danger is not difficulty itself. The danger is building a life where your inner state depends on everything going your way, because then your peace becomes fragile. Tomorrow morning, rehearse calm before conflict arrives. Not perfectly, not mechanically, just enough to remind yourself, I do not need to react to every disruption like a threat. And over time, this creates something rare, a mind that bends without breaking. Before continuing, tell me in the comments which part of your morning drains the most energy from you lately. The phone, the rushing, the overthinking, the lack of direction, or the promises you keep breaking to yourself. Because naming the pattern is often the first step toward changing it. But mental discipline is difficult to maintain when the body itself remains passive and heavy. And that is where the next habit becomes essential. Many people try to discipline their mind while leaving their body completely passive. But the body and the mind constantly speak to each other. When the body remains sluggish, heavy, inactive, the mind often follows the same direction, not always immediately, but gradually. This is why the seventh Stoic habit is simple. Move your body before you start negotiating with your mood. Because one of the biggest traps in modern life is waiting to feel ready before taking action, waiting to feel motivated, waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel energized. But disciplined people understand something important. Action often creates the state you were waiting for, not the other way around. You do not need a perfect workout every morning. This is not about optimization obsession. It is about proving to yourself early in the day that your body still obeys your intentions more than your excuses. 10 minutes is enough. Push-ups, stretching, a fast walk outside, body weight exercises, anything that interrupts passivity. Because movement changes more than muscles, it changes momentum. There is also something psychologically powerful about physical effort early in the morning. It reminds you that resistance is survivable. Your breathing becomes heavier. Your body complains slightly. Part of your mind wants to stop. And then you continue anyway. That experience matters, especially for men who feel mentally weak without fully understanding why. Often, weakness grows when a person repeatedly teaches himself that discomfort is a signal to retreat. Movement interrupts that pattern. And no, this is not about becoming obsessed with discipline as an identity. The Stoic goal was never performance for other people. It was self-command, the ability to say, my feelings are real, but they are not my ruler. Some mornings you will still feel tired. Move anyway. Some mornings your mind will resist. Move anyway. Because every time you act before motivation appears, you weaken the habit of emotional dependence. And slowly, your mornings stop feeling like something that happens to you. They begin feeling like something you consciously enter. But physical movement alone is not enough. The deeper question is whether you can trust yourself to keep even the smallest promises you make in the morning. One of the fastest ways to lose respect for yourself is surprisingly small. Keep making promises you do not keep. Not dramatic promises, tiny ones. I'll wake up earlier tomorrow. I'll stop scrolling so much. I'll start taking care of myself again. And then morning comes, and nothing changes. At first, this seems harmless. But over time, something dangerous happens internally. Your mind stops trusting your own words. This is why the 8th Stoic habit matters so much. Protect the first promise you make to yourself each morning, even if it is small, especially if it is small. Because discipline is not built through intensity, it is built through credibility with yourself. There was a man who once decided to rebuild his life after years of mental exhaustion. He did not begin with a complicated routine or radical transformation. He began with one promise. Every morning, before touching his phone, he would drink a glass of water and stand outside for 2 minutes. That was it. Simple enough to sound meaningless, but he kept it. One morning became 3, 3 became 10, 10 became a month. And something inside him slowly changed. Not because drinking water transformed his life, but because he was finally becoming someone who believed his own actions again. Most people underestimate how much inner strength comes from self-trust. When you repeatedly break small promises, your confidence quietly erodes. Not public confidence, private confidence, the kind nobody sees except you. Tomorrow morning, choose one promise that is almost impossible to fail. Make the bed. Write 3 lines in a journal. Walk for 5 minutes. Stretch for 2 minutes. Small enough to repeat, clear enough to measure, then protect it. Because every kept promise becomes evidence. Evidence that your impulses are not in complete control anymore. And once a man begins trusting himself again, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like stability. But there is another layer to mental discipline most people ignore completely, the things they continue feeding every single morning without realizing the cost. Every morning, whether you notice it or not, you are feeding something, feeding clarity or confusion, feeding discipline or impulse, feeding peace or agitation. And the problem is not only the habits you practice, it is the mental patterns you continue nourishing every single day. This is why the 9th Stoic habit is powerful. Decide what you will not feed today. Because many people say they want a calmer mind while constantly feeding the exact things that destroy calm. They feed comparison through endless scrolling, feed resentment through replayed conversations, feed anxiety through constant consumption, feed weakness through excuses repeated so often they start sounding true. Then they wonder why their inner state feels unstable. But the mind grows in the direction of what it repeatedly consumes. That is true emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Tomorrow morning, before the day gains speed, choose one thing you refuse to feed. Maybe it is unnecessary negativity. Maybe it is checking social media before thinking clearly. Maybe it is the habit of mentally attacking yourself every time you make a mistake. And be honest with yourself here. Because one of the hardest questions a person can ask is this: do I truly want peace? Or have I become emotionally attached to chaos? Some people unconsciously feed stress because it makes them feel important. Others feed distraction because silence forces them to confront their life honestly. Awareness matters. The Stoics believed freedom begins when you stop becoming a servant to automatic impulses. And that freedom often starts with subtraction before addition. Not adding more routines. Not adding more motivation. Removing what weakens your mind unnecessarily. A useful morning sentence is this: today, I will not feed. Finish it honestly. Constant comparison, resentment, mindless distraction, self-pity. Simple words, but repeated daily, they sharpen awareness. Because discipline is not only about what you force yourself to do, it is also about what you stop giving energy to. And once you stop feeding the patterns that drain your mind, the final habit becomes possible, entering the day with a deliberate inner command instead of vague hope. Most people begin the day with wishes. I hope today goes well. I hope I stay focused. I hope I feel motivated. But hope without direction quickly collapses under pressure. This is why the final Stoic morning habit matters so much. End your morning with a command, not a wish. Before work begins, before the world becomes loud again, give yourself one clear internal instruction for how you will live today. Not a fantasy, not a motivational speech, a command. The Stoics understood that character is shaped through repeated choices under ordinary conditions. So the question is not, how do I become perfect? The question is, how will I conduct myself today when difficulty appears? That changes the way you enter the day. Instead of drifting emotionally from situation to situation, you carry a deliberate standard into your actions. Maybe your command is, today I will remain calm when frustrated. Or, today I will finish difficult tasks before seeking comfort. Or even, today I will speak with patience instead of irritation. Simple, but specific. Because vague intentions create vague behavior. Clear standards create clearer actions. There is also something psychologically powerful about speaking to yourself with authority instead of negotiation. Many people spend their mornings bargaining with themselves. Maybe later, maybe tomorrow, maybe when I feel better. But self-command begins when your inner voice becomes steadier and more direct. Not cruel, not aggressive, clear. A disciplined morning does not guarantee a perfect day. You will still face stress, unexpected problems, moments where old habits try to return. But these habits create something deeper than productivity. They create orientation. You stop entering the day mentally scattered. You enter it remembering who you are trying to become. And in a world constantly competing for your attention, that clarity becomes a form of strength most people never develop. Because in the end, these morning habits are not really about routines at all. They are about the kind of man you slowly become through repetition. A disciplined morning is not built in one dramatic decision. It is built in small moments most people ignore. The moment you do not reach for the phone immediately, the moment you sit quietly instead of escaping noise, the moment you choose one real priority instead of drowning in mental clutter. Over time, those moments begin changing something deeper than routine. They change your relationship with yourself. Because many people wake up every morning already divided internally. One part wants growth, another wants comfort. One part wants peace, another keeps feeding chaos. And eventually, that internal conflict becomes exhausting. The Stoics understood that self-command is not about controlling the entire world around you. It is about learning not to abandon yourself in the middle of ordinary life. That is why these habits matter. Not because they make you look disciplined online, not because they create some perfect morning aesthetic, but because they slowly rebuild inner stability. Think back to the beginning of this video. The man waking up and instantly surrendering his attention to the world. Notifications deciding his mood. Stress deciding his focus. Impulse deciding his actions. Now compare that to a man who begins the morning differently. He pauses before consuming, observes his mind before reacting, chooses his main battle deliberately, accepts small discomfort without resistance, protects his promises, guards what enters his attention. Externally, those mornings may not look dramatic. Internally, they create completely different lives. And here is the important part. You do not need all 10 habits perfectly tomorrow morning. Do not turn discipline into another form of self-punishment. Choose 3. Only 3. Practice them consistently for the next few days with honesty and attention. Because real discipline is usually quieter than people expect. It does not always feel intense. Sometimes it simply feels like finally becoming someone your own mind can rely on again. And in a distracted world, that kind of inner reliability becomes rare and powerful. Tomorrow morning will test you again, not through some huge life crisis, through ordinary moments. The phone beside the bed, the impulse to delay, the temptation to escape discomfort, the habit of drifting unconsciously into another day. That is where discipline actually begins, not when life becomes easier, not when motivation suddenly appears, but in the quiet decision to stop giving your mind away so easily. The Stoics believed peace was not something you found accidentally. It was something you practiced, repeatedly, patiently, morning after morning. So when you wake up tomorrow, do not ask yourself whether you feel inspired. Ask yourself whether you are willing to lead yourself consciously for one more day. Start small, protect your attention. Keep one promise, choose one meaningful battle. Refuse one unnecessary distraction. That is enough to begin changing the direction of your life. Subscribe if you want to continue building this kind of discipline, not loud, not performative, but steady and real. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, which one of these morning habits will you begin tomorrow? Because the way you start your morning eventually becomes the way you live your life.